Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. In this video we will solve some of the practical questions. So total of 3 questions will be solved, which will cover almost all the transactions from which questions comes in accounting equation. And also, if you feel that we have missed any transaction, please mention about it in the comment box or mail to us. We will upload the solution video of the same in our next video. Now suppose this is first sample question. And let's see question 1. There are 7 transactions listed over here, so let's see its solution. Now we will put each transaction into equation. First is putting of cash into business. So we have cash component in asset side as capital component in liability plus capital side, and 50,000 will be added to both the sides. Second is purchase of goods for cash. Over here, as we have learnt earlier, there is change in form of asset from cash to stock. Hence, a new component would be created with stock and 30,000 would be added, and on the other hand 30,000 will be reduced from cash. Third is purchase of goods on credit. Over here, asset is increased along with liability plus capital due to addition of a new component there in the form of creditor. Hence, 20,000 would be added on both the sides. Fourth is goods sold for 12,000, whose cost was 10,000. Now the first thing is stock is reduced by 10,000 and cash will increase by 12,000. Now we see asset side is more than 2,000 from liability plus capital side. So this 2,000 reflects profit earned by selling these goods. Since profit belongs to owner, hence his account in business, that is capital, will be increased by 2,000. Fifth is furniture purchased on credit. Now this will result in addition of one more component in asset in the form of furniture. Hence, we will add 2,000 under asset side, under furniture and creditor will be increased by 2,000 in liability plus capital side. Sixth is paid cash to creditor. Here simply cash component from asset side and creditor component from liability plus asset side will be reduced by 15,000 each. Last is salary paid. Here on asset side cash will be reduced, and now coming to liability plus capital side, since salary is paid by owner to his employees, hence capital component would be reduced. And as you can see, balance on both the sides will be equal, that is 58,000. Now this is question number 2. You can take your time and read this question. Now let's solve this. Now the first entry is simple, that is we started business with cash of 60,000. As a result, on asset side cash component is generated, and on liability plus capital side capital component is generated, and both the sides will have 60,000 each as their balance. The second entry is rent paid in advance. Now if you remember the accrual principle, any expense shall be recorded in the period in which goods or service in exchange for the payment is availed. Over here, rent is paid, which is not of capital nature, still we can't record it as a regular expense. Hence, we will create a component in asset side as prepaid expense and record this amount there along with simultaneously reducing cash balance. Now these entries will balance our equation. But what will be the entry when service against this prepaid rent is availed? So at that time, we will simply write off this prepaid expense from asset side and also reduce the capital component in liability plus capital side with the same amount. Hope you have grasped the concept of creating another form of asset known as prepaid expense and simultaneously transferring its balance to expense at time when service or goods against the same is availed. Now coming to the third entry. Third entry is purchase of goods on credit and cash. Here, first is to increase the stock component on asset side with 50,000 and simultaneously reducing cash component with 30,000. Now to balance the equation on liability plus capital side, we will create a new component as creditor and add 20,000 there as it denotes amount which business owes for this new asset creation. Fourth entry is sale of goods costing 10,000. Here first stock component of asset side is reduced by 10,000 and increasing the cash component by 12,000. Here in order to balance the equation, we will increase the capital component on liability plus capital side by 2,000 as this denotes the profit earned by selling that portion of stock. Fifth entry is part of salary paid in cash and part kept as payable. Now firstly, we will reduce the cash component by 500. Now coming to liability plus capital side, we create salary component and record 100 as it denotes amount which business owes. Similarly, like we created creditor component when we purchased stock. Now if you notice, liability plus capital side is increased by 100 rupees whereas asset side is reduced by 500 rupees. So overall there is a gap of 600 rupees on both the sides. Now this gap denotes expense which business has to bear in the form of salary in order to generate profit. So capital component is reduced with 600 to balance this equation. Last entry is motorcycle bought for personal use. Now here firstly cash is reduced by 5,000 rupees. Now since it is the owner's personal use instead of business, we will reduce capital component by same amount which also denotes drawing. Had this motorcycle been bought for business, then instead of reducing capital component, a new component would have been created in asset side itself under the name of motorcycle and amount would have been added over there. Now after posting all these entries, you will see both the side of equation have an equal balance now. That is 76,500 on each side. Now this is the third sample question. Now its solution. Over here you can see the owner only brings cash to start the business, but he also brings stock, machinery, furniture and his bank balance also. So to record on capital plus liability side, capital component is opened and on the other side, asset side will have multiple components such as cash, bank, stock, furniture and machinery. In previous question, you have seen business was started only with cash and later on all these items were procured. Over here, all these components are brought as capital itself. Second entry, as you can see, is selling of 1/3 of stock as capital at the profit of 10%. So first of all, we need to compute what is 1/3 of stock, which is 1/3, 1 by 3 into the stock value, which is 60,000. So the value we get will be 20,000. So first is reducing the stock by 20,000. Now since these stocks are sold at 10% more value, so selling price will be 22,000. That is 20,000 plus 10% of 20,000. Since half these stocks are sold at cash, so cash balance will be increased by 11,000. That is 50% of 22,000. And debtor will be increased by 11,000. After recording these on asset side, you will notice the side is increased by 2,000 from liability plus capital side. Now this is simply profit earned on selling these stocks. So we will increase the capital side by 2,000. Third is recording of depreciation of 10% on machine. So before we record, we will compute the value of depreciation. Since it is 10% of machinery value, So the value that we get will be 10,000. Now to record this value, we will reduce machinery by 10,000 on asset side and capital by 10,000 on liability plus capital side. Fourth is cash withdrawn for personal use. So simply cash is reduced in asset side and on liability plus capital side, capital component is reduced by the same amount. Fifth entry. Now before recording this entry, we will learn the concept of interest on drawings. Some business, in order to check that capital accounts are not used for personal use, there is interest charged on all amount withdrawn by owner for personal use. In this question, amount withdrawn as drawing is 10,000. So the value of interest will be 500 rupees. That is 5% of 10,000. Since these interest is not yet received, so on asset side, interest receivable component is created and simultaneously capital is increased by this amount in liability plus capital side. Sixth entry is goods sold on credit. Here, since nothing is mentioned about profit earned, so we will simply reduce stock by 10,000 and increase the debtor by 10,000 and no profit will be recorded on capital component. And the last entry is receiving money from debtor. So it is just the reversal of sixth entry. That is, cash is increased by 10,000 and debtor is reduced by 10,000. Now we will look at some tips for solving any kind of accounting equations. All the components which are of nominal nature, such as depreciation, salary paid, rent paid, interest received, are increased or decreased from capital component. And correspondingly, cash is increased or decreased or new component in asset or liability plus capital side is created as the case may be. In case of goods sold at profit or loss, cost of goods which are dispatched is reduced from stock and correspondingly cash debtor is increased with the amount received for such dispatch. Any surplus or deficit is adjusted in capital component. In two examples, stock of 10,000 is sold at 12,000 and 8,000. In both scenarios, stock is reduced by 10,000. When we see that stock is sold at 12,000, cash is increased by 12,000 and 2,000 is added to capital to balance the capital plus liability side. And when it is sold at 8,000, cash is increased by 8,000 and capital is reduced by 2,000. So always check the equation after you post any entries. Hope this video was useful for you. Do share, like and subscribe for more videos. And in case you have any query, please mention it in the comment box below or email us in the mail ID mentioned below for solution. Thank you so much.